What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot of severe weather potentially coming starting early next week. We have a lot to really talk to you about today, especially for the threat for Tuesday and Wednesday, and we're not ruling out a potential threat later into the week as the SPC has predictability too low for all of them, and they kind of highlight it in their discussion over here. Here's the situation we have. We have a 15% risk from pretty much the middle part of the lower peninsula in Michigan all the way to Oklahoma over here. And this has been expanding over the last several days. Before, we were looking at around Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois. Then it got pushed into Indiana, and now it got pushed even further up to the north in Michigan and as far east as Ohio. In fact, almost the entire states of Illinois and Indiana are under this 15% risk. So we're going to have to pay a very close attention to that, as there is a probability that this could increase, as we're going to show you some factors later on. Here's what we have also for you. We have a 15% risk for parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama, as well as kind of small tips of Arkansas and Georgia into this. Before, it was much larger. We were thinking about from pretty much southern Illinois all the way to around the Atlanta area in Georgia, but it has decreased mainly because the threat for the stuff that's going to be happening on Tuesday has increased substantially. So here's what we have going on for you right here with the SPC forecast discussion. We're going to go ahead and zoom in on this to kind of show you what we're looking at right here. Day 4 and Day 5, which is Tuesday and Wednesday, an upper-level trough is forecast to move across the central United States on Tuesday as an associated mid-level jet moves from the southern plains into the mid-Mississippi Valley. We're going to show you that in just a second, but we're going to continue to read this. Moisture advection ahead of a cold front will likely take place from the Arklatex northward into the southern Great Lakes. In spite of abundant cloud cover, some destabilization is forecast across much of the moist sector ahead of the front. The European model has the mean layer CAPE generally peaking around the 500 to 1,000 joules per kilogram range along parts of the moist axis by the afternoon. If you don't know what that mumbo-jumbo means, it essentially means that we're looking at stuff in the mid-Mississippi Valley. There's going to be some cloud cover, apparently, that may kind of inhibit some of the worst effects of it. However, there may be enough destabilization to kind of break through that and allow for severe weather to happen. And I will say this, if you want severe weather, you do not need cloud cover, because cloud cover blocks out the sun. And essentially what the sun does is it basically warms the atmosphere up pretty much from the top of the cloud layer and also from the bottom as the sun rays kind of deflect off the ground surface. That's why we have the greenhouse effect going on right there. And that kind of plays into that, and that's what kind of fuels the destabilization going into this. So with that being said, we're going to continue to go ahead. As thunderstorms develop ahead of the front during the late afternoon and early evening, a severe threat is expected from the Ozarks northward to the southern Great Plains. Sorry, not Great Plains, Great Lakes. If it was the Great Plains, I would be putting Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, those states in a threat as well. Wind damage and perhaps a few tornadoes would be possible with supercells and or stronger Boeing line segments, which that's pretty key right there, because they're already calling for supercells 4 days out with this thing, and the SPC is generally quite conservative with how they handle it. But as you can see right there, things are about to get pretty interesting. I know I'm harping on this a little bit. I know we've been on this for like 4 minutes, but please bear with me. We're getting to the juicy stuff in just a second. The front is timed to be in far western Kentucky and far northwestern Tennessee by 12Z on Wednesday. At that time, multiple line segments could be ongoing just ahead of the front, with a strong low-level flow in place, along with the focused bands of a large-scale ascent associated with an approaching upper-level trough. The more organized line segments could be capable of producing wind damage. So in layman's terms, what I'm reading here is essentially for Day 5, we're looking at more of a wind risk rather in more of a squall line type of situation, whereas before where it's kind of a more isolated segment with a bit of a squall line developing right there. Just for context right there. I know I'm reading this out. However, the potential severe threat appears great enough to warrant leaving the 15% contour in place for day 5 across much of northern Mississippi, Alabama, northward to near the Ohio River. The threat ahead of the front is expected to decrease for some during the afternoon as the stronger low-level flow ahead of the system weakens somewhat. So that's the situation that we have going on with this right here. So now we're going to go ahead and move to the modeling that we have right here, and we're going to kind of show you the dynamics of what's going on behind this. So we're going to show you the European to kind of see what we're talking about right here. What we have going on right here, what we have pulled up for you is the 250 millibar jet that we have right here. This is where the jet we're paying attention to is. And the reason we're taking a look at the upper levels is we're going to have to start pretty much at the upper levels to get it and then work our way down to kind of give a 3D picture of what may be going on with this. So here's the 250 millibar winds right here. The situation that we have going on starting on Tuesday is, well, the jet that we have right here, this is our I believe subtropical jet that's going to be mainly taking care of this whole thing right here. And the jet has gotten, at least in previous model runs, I'm going to take a quick look at the 0Z as well. It's actually a little bit stronger than the 12Z right here. The jet is getting pretty supercharged, to say the very least. In fact, we're looking at jet winds by 3 a.m. on Tuesday of up to 186 knots at 250 hectopascals or millibars in the atmosphere. Which, keep in mind, that's a very high amount. As you can see, it's 10,000 meters, so you need to keep that in mind. But the fact that we're seeing a very strong jet already is showing an alarming sign enough to kind of see what we're looking at right there. Now we're going to move down to the 500 millibar jet right here, that just kind of seeing the 3D picture of what's going on. And the 500 millibar winds get particularly large, especially into the overnight and early morning on Wednesday. We're looking at areas cracking 100 knots by the morning on Wednesday. But for the big threat on Tuesday, right here, as we can see it show you right there, we do have an increase of wind speeds across Illinois, Indiana, from about like 47 knots, 49 knots, down to about 70 knots in parts of Missouri over there. These heights are about 5,000 meters up. And essentially what's going on here is that that's going to essentially help with at least a little bit higher up with shear right here. That's going to essentially be our 6-kilometer shear as we're continuing to take a look at this. And as we're going to show you with some soundings later on, it's going to be a very essentially make or break situation that we have going on right here. Next thing we're showing you is our 700 millibar wind speeds right there, which is going to help with some lower shear. That's going to help with around our 3-kilometer shear as we continue to look at the soundings. And based off what I'm looking at, starting around Tuesday evening, we're looking at least in the 3-kilometer shear range, anywhere from 50 to 60 knots across much of Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, and even into Michigan, more into the late night. We're looking at areas around of 20 to 40 knots going into that, and that's going to potentially inhibit some supercell development, and that's why we're looking at these right here. Especially the 700 is when we start getting into, okay, we're looking at this wind speed right here. And if the direction's good enough, we're going to be looking at some potential supercell development with this, or any type of severe weather threat development with this. And we have our 850 right here, which is going to kind of highlight more of our 1-kilometer shear right here. In some parts of Illinois right here, we're looking at a good amount of shear, like 30 to 40 knots of 1-kilometer shear, which that's very interesting to say at the very least. And that could raise the question right there, at least for a little bit of a tornado threat as well. I'm not saying there's going to be tornadoes going on with this 100%, but I'm just taking a look at what we're kind of given to us. With us looking at kind of the upper level winds, now we can kind of see what the Cape's looking like in some of these model runs right here. Here's our surface-based Cape. Right here, we're going to go ahead and move to the Midwest segment right here. And the Cape, especially of what we're looking at, mainly due to the temperatures going up, as we can show you right here, the temperatures are going to be very warm, as we're seeing right here. The temps are going to be, at least by 18Z, it's in some areas, it's going to be 83 degrees in parts of Missouri, especially around St. Louis and those areas right there. In Chicago, it's going to be around in the 70s, which it's going to be a very nice day for a lot of people. And you don't expect 80-degree weather in February, first of all. That is very interesting to say the very least. Our dew points right there kind of highlight why we're looking at this severe weather risk as we are. because the dew points that we're looking at not very much 60s dew points, although we do start seeing that in parts of Indiana around 3 p.m. It's definitely a higher area in parts of Indiana, Ohio, those areas right there, and we kind of have our setup going on with the potential severe weather threats as this cold front starts to push through. However, as I'm looking at this, that's definitely moist enough for our severe convection right there. With that being said, let's go ahead and show you what the Cape's really looking at right here. And pretty much by 1 p.m. Right here on the 27th of February, we are looking at Cape values of over 1,600 according to the GEM GDPS. If we show you the GFS model, it is a little bit less right here, but those values might increase as the days continue to go on. We're going to have to pay very close attention to this. But now to the big stuff that you guys have been waiting for. Here's our soundings that we have pulled up for you. This is a sounding pulled up around St. Louis right here as we're continuing to show you this. This is around around 6 p.m. on Tuesday right here. From what we're looking at Cape values of over around 1,100. We're looking at decent lapse rates. The shear is going to be what we're going to be paying attention to, is because the speed shear is definitely there. We're at 30 knots, 35 knots, and 52 knots for 1, 3, and 6 kilometers respectively. That's why I was showing you those upper level heights and those upper level height winds right there to kind of give a 3D picture of what we're looking at. But the directional shear is going to be a bit interesting as well, because the directional shear, if we see a little bit more directional shear, there could be a potential greater threat for tornadoes. But for now, what I'm looking at mainly is more of a wind threat and supercell threat that we have going on right here. If we go ahead and show you another sounding right here, this is from the GEM RDPS right here. This was taken in Indiana right here. This is where this was around. This is around where this was taken right here in Indiana. This is around Jasper County, Indiana, if I remember that correctly. We're looking at surface Cape of around 1,500, and this is for noon on Tuesday right here. Directional shear is definitely increasing right there, and if there is going to be a tornado threat, it's going to predominantly be around northern Illinois, parts of northern Indiana, and even into western Michigan over there. I almost said southeastern Michigan. That would have been interesting to take a look at. And other than that, the main threat's going to be wind, maybe about 1, maybe 1.5 inch hail with this. But even still, the fact that we're getting a potential severe weather outbreak in February for the Midwest, this isn't the Deep South either, where we would expect this stuff. The Midwest is getting something in pretty much late February, is going to be interesting to take a look at. And I know Michigan has a presidential primary coming up on Tuesday as well, and considering they're in a severe weather outlook, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But we will close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather. I know I've been gone for the last 3 weeks. I had other stuff to take care of, but hey, I'm back. We're going to be covering this severe weather stuff. We're going to stay on top of it, so be sure you stay tuned for more information. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.